My spirit is infinite. I don't waste moments on what's insignificant. Moments move different when you discipline. Silence teach lessons they never mention it. My bloodline needs healing. I'm reaching for magic beyond what's indigenous. Not just the drums or the rituals, but the knowing that live in the sinew and ligaments. I walk slow, but I ride.
Happy Monday, everyone, and welcome back to another round of My Patriot Report Live. I'm the bridge connecting the next generation of federal contractor. I am Ratwan Hill, and with me I have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ambassador of Peace. And if you don't know who he is by now, you might want to ask Gemini, Mr. Walter Cotton III. Mr. Cotton, how you doing, man? How was the weekend?
I laughed a little bit because I have one of my younger nieces visiting with us, and we went bike riding in Central Park yesterday. And I'm a little long in the tooth for those of you who are still out there thirst chasing. And it was a little bit difficult for me to get around Central Park twice, but I made it and I'm here. So
yes, sir.
I had a great weekend.
I could imagine with the Knicks, they looking strong. They said if the Knicks win, you ain't gonna be able to tell a New Yorker nothing for 5 years.
I think that's absolutely true. The energy around the Knicks potentially doing it again is infectious. I gotta admit.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, let's dive into the real stuff right now. So I'm seeing things on news about things with Iran, and it seems like it could be picking up, and that the ceasefire talks are pretty much dead in the water. I don't know where that is at right now, but my question is, right now, should we just be focusing on the insulation of America?
Absolutely, yes. We need to focus on the economic insulation of America, because from a combat or a kinetic perspective, there is no overt threat. And I do believe that the things that we did in order to quell all of the energy in the Middle East has reduced the possibility that there's going to be any type of a terrorist event here in the United States. And so, yeah, the energy that I'm experiencing right now suggests that we can turn our attention to majoring in the major thing, which is the economic vitalization of the citizens of these United States.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And that brings me to what we want to talk about today, right? We know that there's a bunch of veteran nonprofit organizations and a bunch of veteran service organizations, and you're the president of the Elite SDVOB network, which is one of the oldest VSOs in regards to business for the disabled, for the veteran population. Now, a lot of people, they're not even aware, and including myself. Before I interfaced with you, I never heard of the Elite SDVOB network. I was familiar with the American Legion, even though I didn't know what they were, and DAV and all the rest of the organizations. So I just want to have that conversation with you about the Elite SDVOB network, and you taking that position as president, and what does that mean for the veteran population and for the organization as a whole. But I just want to start with the basics. What is the Elite SDVOB network for anybody who's hearing this for the first time?
Well, the Elite Service Disabled Veteran Business Network is the first business-focused VSO in the Veteran Service Organization system. And it was a organization that was created out of necessity, because most of our veteran service organizations were hyper-focused on either healthcare or education issues, or some other political issues that were of interest to the members of the then VSO. And so when Public Law 10650 came online, those organizations weren't easily pivoted towards the business needs of their members. And I know that firsthand, because I was a card-carrying member of the American Legion, and we created the Small Business Task Force within the American Legion to accommodate or to account for this challenge. That wasn't significant enough to meet the needs of all of the veterans out there that were looking at entrepreneurialism. And so Bob Mass, a Navy veteran out of San Diego, I believe, got together with a few other, forward-leaning veterans, and they created the Elite Service Disabled Veteran Business Network. And that VSO has been responsible for some yeoman outcomes that the other veteran service organizations didn't have their eyes on and weren't considering. For example, the 3% contracting goal that veterans enjoy at the federal level was something that they didn't enjoy at the state contracting level. Mm-hmm. Service Disabled Veteran Network hyper focused on that issue, and as a result of their advocacy, we have multiple states around the country now that have a mirror, and in some states an accelerated goal for veteran contracting. Mm-hmm. For example, here in the state of New York, we enjoy a 6% goal for veteran contracting, and unlike the federal goal, which only accommodates disabled veterans, the state version here in New York accommodates all veterans. And so the Elite Service Disabled Veteran Network took on a yeoman's challenge of creating the fabric and the foundation upon which the goal attainment that veterans are enjoying today rests.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what I hear you say, so you guys essentially, because you guys can advocate for veterans, that you're able to make or able to influence how policies are created for veterans and service disabled veteran-owned small businesses from the state level to the federal level. So y'all have the agility.
Well, I didn't say that, but it's very astute for you to pull that out of that statement that I made, that this particular VSO, this particular veteran service organization, differentiated itself from a lot of the other nonprofits that come online, in that when Bob and those set up the Elite, they set it up as a 501c19. And if you go and research the attributes of that type of a nonprofit organization, it is an organization that was set up with the ability to actually lobby our lawmakers. And so that differentiation, even in the forward thinking of setting it up that way, gave it the ability to do some things that, like, let's say the Vietnam Veterans of America, or the another VSO that I had the ability to be a founding member of, which is the Black Veterans Economic Empowerment Council. These are all 501c19 organizations that are available for charitable giving, but they don't have the authority within the core of their makeup to lobby, and therefore they can't influence legislation and regulations as favorably and as effectively as a 501c19, which is what the Elite Service Disabled Veteran Network is.
Okay, so for everybody who don't understand the significance of being able to do that, could you just explain the significance of having the ability to go and lobby to Congress, especially given the two bills that we're driving and that you've been pushing for the past better part of 3 years, the Contract Out Veterans Act and the Veteran Member Business Loan Act? Could you just explain how essential or significant that is, having that ability?
Well, in today's political environment, it's more significant than it was in yesterday's political environment, because there are so many shenanigans that are out there trying to obfuscate or mask the veteran or voter's ability, to mask the voter's power, right? And what has occurred is you've got layers that have been put in place between the constituent and the lawmaker, right? The constituent and the elected official. And within those layers are things like political action committees, lobbying groups, right, that are designed to designed to take the power of the electorate and use it to influence the lawmaker. And so what our ability to do as a veteran service organization that has direct authority to lobby the government, we have the ability to leapfrog all of those gatekeepers. We have the ability to leapfrog all of those barriers that have been put in place to obfuscate our members' view of our interests. And so if you're a veteran that wants to get out there and directly influence the political process in your community, in your state, or in this nation, you need to be a part of an organization that gives you direct access. Because if you don't have that direct access, now you have to join a political action group, right? You have to join a community of practice, and you have to adhere to their rules, ideologies, and visions in order to get your mission across. In this situation, because of your service to this great nation and our forward-leaning ability to set up an organization that you can use to do so, you have direct access to your political lawmakers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, I just wanted to, as you were saying that, what popped in my mind, so I just wanted to throw out a scenario. So is this only for just veteran business owners? Let's say I'm a service aspiring entrepreneur, a disabled veteran who's an aspiring entrepreneur, and I know that we have the VNRE self-employment track, but I'm unable to get through the door. Is that something that I could join the Elite SDVOB network and have that conversation? Like, I see the problem with the VNRE. Is that something that you guys have the ability to influence, or would they have to go somewhere else to be able to influence something like the VNRE self-employment track?
Well, when you talk about the VRNE program, you lean on the self-employment track, and that's an entrepreneurial component, right? That's a business component, right? That's something that fits well within our lane of advocacy. Other communities that have healthcare or education as their lead item, right, takes these business issues and they put them at the bottom of the rung. And it's difficult for those organizations to hear the needs of those constituents within their organizations. That's the uniqueness of being connected to a veteran service organization that specializes in the things that are of importance. We major in the major thing because at the end of the day, it's all about economics. It's all about the economy, right? It's all about the golden rule. He who has the gold rules, and we're trying to make sure that our constituents, the men and women who have bored the battle, have their deserved share.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So for what I'm hearing you to say, and my understanding of all the disenfranchised veterans who went through the VNRE program and was looking for the self-employment track, but they were denied because of whatever systemic issues within the VNRE. What I'm hearing you to say is that they should essentially, if they have a problem with them, that they should be joining some organization, like not an organization, but joining the Elite SDVOB network, because us coming together, we can then have one voice that could possibly create a more streamlined, easier process going through the VNRE self-employment.
Absolutely. And you said something during that stanza that just shakes me to the core. And what you did was you used the term veteran in the same sentence with the word disenfranchised, right? And for me, of course I'm biased because I'm a veteran, but for me, it just does not make sense for us to do anything that would disenfranchise or de-incentivize him and her who bears the battle. As an example, and I'm sure this was a Freudian slip or just a faux pas, but this morning I was listening to a interview with our current commander in chief, and he was talking about the men and women that are over there in the Strait of Hormuz. And that issue, we all know, has been decided, right? It's been decided that the United States is going to back out of that area. We've already made that choice. Congress has spoken, and so that's going to happen. But the question was asked about whether or not we should be bringing our men and women home, right, now that the decision has been made. And the commander-in-chief said, you know what, it really doesn't cost us a lot to keep them there as a potential deterrent. And I just was incensed with the level of discomfort, dis-ease, because of the tone deafness of that statement. The tone deafness of a statement that says, I can play with these people's lives as if they were monopoly pieces that you move on a board. The reality of the situation is that if you have already sealed your fate in the Middle East, you need to stop utilizing our men and women as pawns for these shenanigans, because the potential for something catastrophic exists. And so, again, when I hear the word veteran and disenfranchised in the same sentence, the patriot in me just wakes up and wants to move something.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, before I make this pivot, because that was a good segue into opportunity zones, because I know that that's something that you're big on, and I don't think that's something common knowledge to the masses. But I did want to ask you, do you think we need to rethink what a veteran service organization should be in this modern economy, in this today's season? Should we be rethinking how we create VSOs now?
Absolutely. We absolutely should. Yes. And I was going to revert back to another plug for my good friend Sophia Nelson's book about redefining freedom, and how, the younger generation should be rethinking, their relationship to the Constitution and how it supports the needs of today's generation. But we absolutely do need to rethink the relationship of today's VSOs to the veterans, right? Because the veterans that are coming home today are coming home to a new environment. They're coming home to a job market that doesn't support the kind of re-entry that supported even our Vietnam era veterans, much less our Gulf War era veterans. And so the VSOs of today need to put their ear to the road and listen to the needs and the strides of today's veteran community, because it's a big challenge when you're sitting in a situation where you've served your nation honorably. You have been honorably discharged. You're receiving a pension from the federal government because of that service, and you need to get food stamps in order to feed your family, right? You need to be on a housing program, right, in order to afford the rent in the community that you live in. Folks, if we are putting the men and women who bore the battle in that kind of a condition, we're setting this nation up for future failure. And so our VSOs need to get out of the mustard and catch up and realize the winds of change have shifted, right? Our veterans don't want to be employees. They want to be employers, and put the mechanisms, systems, and solutions in place to accommodate that. And that's what we're doing with the Elite Service Disabled Veteran Network. And as I said when I got off of that boat, we can show you better than we can tell you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, indeed. Now that brings me to the opportunity zone, which is a big component of what you're doing with the Elite SDVOB network and you planting the flag. We heard you talk about New York. We heard you talk about Florida. Now, okay, before I get into the details of that, could you break down for the audience who's first time hearing about this opportunity zone? Could you just give us a high level overview of what the opportunity zone is?
Yeah, so very simply put, it's a program that was created by, or should I say, was extended by the is it the Big Beautiful Bill?
Yes.
And it creates a tax incentive program for anyone who has capital gains and wants to take those capital gains to themselves personally with the best possible tax treatment, or should I say tax-free. So to say it in a way that a layman would understand it, if you have capital gains, you can participate in an opportunity zone fund that invests those funds in these geographically defined areas, and those funds will grow tax-free, and you can reduce the tax obligation that you have on that asset that you enjoy by participating in an opportunity zone. And in many instances or situations, and this is where we're trying to be strategic about this, these opportunity zones are underserved communities. They're historically underserved communities, which include historically underserved business districts. Those are hub zones for those of you that are federal contractors. And so strategically, what our VSO is doing is we are proactively creating an alliance between the hub zone and the opportunity zone. And we are developing very fertile development opportunities for disabled veterans who want to go and acquire contracts or take a investment from the Defense Production Act, domicile it in the community that they live in, wink, wink, if you're smelling what I'm cooking, folks, listen, and create the kind of economic splash that justifies the need for additional businesses, whether it be dry cleaning or manufacturing. So imagine, we heard recently the president talk about a $700 million investment utilizing the Defense Production Act, right? Imagine that you were one of the lucky recipients of a portion of that $700 million. Say you got $50 million to build a manufacturing plant in your community. What you've just done is you've just become a jobs creating juggernaut within your community. And we're not just imagining that kind of a system. We're not just, spewing hyperbole about those kinds of systems. We're actually creating them, deploying them, and implementing them. And we'd like you to be a part of it.
Yes, sir. Now, so just so I can run this back. So essentially, you're saying that, say that I invested in stocks or real estate, I got a return on that investment, 10 million. I'm ready to pull that 10 million out, cash out. I take that 10 million and reinvest it into an opportunity zone.
Well, the first thing that you need to consider in that transaction that you just described is that when you pull that money out, there's a tax consequence associated with it, right? There's a capital gains tax that you have to pay, right, on the appreciation that you got from that investment. And for a lot of people that went into, whether it was Bitcoin or, an early technology stock, right, the appreciation is huge as opposed to the basis that they had in the asset. And so all of the tax in here is just, what the government is trying to give you a break against.
And then essentially, so that money can be reinvested into that opportunity zone. So that 10,000 could potentially be 25,000. I mean, that 10 million could be 25 million, and then that 15%, all that 25 million, I could then pull out tax free.
Exactly. You can pull out the appreciation on your investment tax free if you hold it for the appropriate period of time. But there's also a reduction in your tax obligation on the capital gains that you pulled out. And at the end of the day, all other things being equal, the profitability that you enjoy on this investment is going to outpace all obligations that you had on that previous capital gains, right? Making this a generational transfer, wealth transfer for your family that's 100% tax-free.
That sounds significant given where we're looking at where it looks economically for the United States. It seems like I hear talks about an AI bubble, and that we're close to a recession, if not a depression. It seems like that's a no-brainer if you're invested into a opportunity zone that is structured correctly in this season. I think that's the significant part, being structured correctly, because not all opportunity zones are going to be made equal. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, that would be a very fair assessment. It's interesting that you use or close that sentence with the word equal or a point towards equality, because depending on where you are in the economy right now, you're already in a depression, right? We talk about that upper K and that lower K, right? The further you get down that, middle class into the underclass, the economy down there is already dark, right? And so, that recession pressure is creeping its way up the K, and it's going to make its way into your neighborhood if it hasn't already. And what's really interesting, or should I say, what really needs to be taken into consideration is the fact that all communities are not going to respond evenly to this recessionary, dare I say, depression pressure, right? Some communities are going to fold and never be able to work their way back. And I'm not trying to be a fear mongerer here. I'm just telling you the way it is. There's some communities that benefited from the technological innovations that we had as we came out of the industrial age and moved into the information age. And some of those technological innovations that came were things like logistics and supply chain management, right? We went away from having to warehouse things, right, to warehousing on the road with just-in-time inventory. And because we could warehouse on the road, expansion could occur, right? Franchise models could expand in areas that were on the distribution route, right? When you close those distribution routes off, there are a lot of those nodes that are on the outside of that distribution channel that will dry up, right? And so I'm saying all of this to say that all communities are not going to fare evenly as a result of the shenanigans that are going to be the outgrowth of today's economic downturn. Those communities that have a rich and healthy vetrepreneur community are going to fare better than those communities that don't.
And that leads me to my next question. What do you believe makes up a good characteristics for an opportunity zone? Is it just the veteran population that's around it, or are there other attributes that contribute to opportunity zone?
Well, that's a good question, because in order for an opportunity zone to be ideal and most robust, there's got to be community engagement, right? The state, the county, the city government, right? They all have to be invested in making sure that their opportunity zone, hub zone footprint is veteran friendly. It's most veteran viable, right? And so if there are other incentives that can be invested in those communities by those assets, they need to be made so that the veterans know that they're wanted in those communities, right? And what I'm talking about is, ensuring that you have the additional educational assets that support your veteran community. For example, everyone knows that I offer a class that provides the most streamlined pathway to becoming vetrepreneur superstars and heroes. If you're a community that's serious about your veterans and serious about business, you're working with your local community college, right? You're working with your local colleges and economic development centers to make sure that those classes are available to your veteran members in your communities, right? It's those kinds of cross-pollination, those type of collaborative efforts between the public-private partnerships that will create the communities that veterans will beat a path to. And I'm building 2 of them to show you an example of what it looks like. Like I said, when I got off that boat, I can show you better than I can tell you. But Mr. Hill, I'm running past what you wanted me to say. Let me put the big talking stick down.
No, yes, sir. Yes, sir. No, I think that was perfect because what you're essentially saying is that what makes up a good opportunity zone, to what I understand you say to say, is that it needs to have community engagement, and they need to have what's the word I'm looking for?
The
They need to
support of
have,
their leadership, the
yes,
political leadership.
right, right, right. Is that something that the elite SDVOB essentially, that's essentially what you're doing? If so, let's say for instance, New York, right? It's a whole bunch of different regions in New York. If one area of New York is not as engaged, is that when the elite SDVOB uses power to be able to influence those state leaders and community leaders to directly engage and bridge the and create a stronger relationship?
Exactly. You nailed it right on the head, right? And that's where we are different from your standard VSO, because we have an understanding of the business needs. And so when we're talking to our political leaders, we're not talking to them about the healthcare, the education. We're talking to them about the business issues. And so we can articulate the nuanced needs of our community in a fashion that makes sense. And we can talk to them about their shenanigans that don't make sense in a fashion that equally is impactful. For example, right now we have an effort underway to undermine our Small Business Administration that's just downright scary, right? It's just downright disheartening to see the actions to undermine an asset that is that critical to the economic fabric of these United States. And so I heard last year that they reduced the staff at the Small Business Administration by 50%. Didn't make sense to me because we're already coming off of a challenge where we had a 40% reduction in available small businesses that the government had to contract with, right? We had all of these shenanigans coming out of the 8A program, and to reduce the size of that agency at that time didn't make sense to me. And then 2 days ago, we got notification that the agency is now being reorganized. I'm concerned about the people that are reorganizing this agency, because they are coming from an administration that is proving to be not trustworthy. Let me use that language. And so the agency that is undermining the small business community is only taking the government spend and contracting activity and pushing it into a place where it has to be consolidated. It has to be centralized. It has to be bundled. And whenever you consolidate and centralize to that degree, you're picking winners and losers. You're making that total spend only available for fewer and fewer people. And this is where us as VSOs that understand the business side of the equation can have a conversation with Senator Schumer, right? And say to him, listen, it only makes all the sense in the world to give him and her who bore the battle the ability to participate in government contracting. So we have to pass our contract with our Veteran Act, because we need them to help reshore this manufacturing, to help revitalize our supply chain, to help make sure we can recover from the next national disaster that the federal government appears to be ignoring.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And guys, we want to talk about on Wednesday the direct effect of the SBA reorganizing, and as well as the VA reorganizing, because now I'm starting to see dots that I think we could connect on the next episode. But until then, guys, I am Retwine Hill, and that is the Mr. Walter Cotton III. Until next time, guys.